Okay, so we are going to talk about, first of all, how the SAT reading section is structured, and then we're going to talk about central ideas and evidence. So we're going to first watch this video on the SAT reading section, and please tell me if you can hear, because I have never shared a video on Zoom before.
The SAT consists of tests in reading, writing and language, and math, plus an optional essay. This video focuses on the reading test. This test is designed to measure how well you read and interpret the kinds of texts you'll encounter in college and your career. All of the questions are linked to literary or informational passages from engaging published works. These will include single passages, which may have one or more informational graphics, and paired passages. You'll have 65 minutes to read the passages and answer 52 questions. There is one literary passage on the test, which is drawn from an American or international work of fiction, such as a short story or novel. The remaining passages will be informational, taken from nonfiction works in the areas of history, social studies, and science. Included in these nonfiction works will be a passage or pair of passages taken from the U.S. founding documents or the Great Global Conversation, works from around the world that focus on topics like freedom, justice, and human dignity. The purpose of each passage in the reading test might be to tell a story, make an argument, or explain a study or experiment. The passages will range in complexity from a 9th grade level up to what you would expect to see in the first year of college or other post-secondary training. The questions on the reading test fall into 3 main categories: information and ideas, questions that focus on what the passage says, directly or indirectly, rhetoric, questions that ask you to think about how the author conveys his or her meaning, and synthesis, questions that require you to draw conclusions and make connections between passages or between passages and informational graphics. For more information on the SAT reading test, check out satpractice.org, where you can get free hands-on practice.
All right, and so, hold on. Okay, so here's just basically a summary of what that video said. The SAT reading section is 65 minutes long for you to answer 52 questions, and there are 5 passages, and so there are 4 single passages and 1 paired passage, and if you haven't seen that before, you'll see an example soon. And then within those 5 passages, the subjects that they'll be on are 1 literary passage, 2 history and social sciences, and 2 science passages. So for those of you who have taken the SAT before, this is probably a review, but it's good to know what you're going into. So today I really want to focus on annotating, but mostly like really understanding what a passage you're reading is talking about. So today we're focusing on information and ideas. And so this is really about reading the passage, really getting to understand it. And so today we're going to work on annotating so we can focus very closely on what we're reading. So annotating, does anybody want to tell me what annotating is? I actually can't see anybody, so if you can unmute.
Does anybody know anything about annotating? Have you ever heard this word before? What can you tell us?
Tutors, you can also answer.
Okay, I'll hop in for a second. I like to annotate to keep my brain focused when I'm reading a passage, because sometimes there's too many words and I get confused. So I need to keep track of things by annotating.
Yeah, and so annotating is basically like, as you could see on this left side with this example, is just marking up the text. And so you can see here they've circled a lot of things, they've underlined a lot of things, they've squiggly underlined a lot of things, and they've written on the passage. So when you're taking the SAT reading section, it is totally cool to just mark up all over the test because they do not care. In fact, they actually encourage you to write over it, and it helps you focus a lot. So what should you write on the text? What should you annotate? These are some things that on the right side you can see here's some suggestions about what I like to annotate and what some people also suggest annotating. Um, Underlining main ideas, circling keywords. So this could be names or it could be kind of words that indicate tone or point of view. So if it seems like the author is saying something is bad or something is good, you can circle that and it'll be a tone indicator. Another good thing to mark is transition words. So at the beginning of a sentence, it might start with however, or although, or later, or something like that. That usually marks a change in tone or something. And so that's also really good to mark. I also put the word critics because there are a lot of passages on the SAT that have a paragraph about what critics say. And so it's really good to indicate that paragraph. Oh, and this is really important, writing summaries of the paragraphs because sometimes these passages get pretty long and you forget what you read as you keep reading. So after you read a paragraph or a couple paragraphs, writing just a really short summary about what that paragraph was about is really helpful. So, oh, I also wanted to ask, does anybody want to share any other annotations that they do when they read passages? If not, that's okay. You can also share within your groups when we break out. So I want to do a practice passage with you guys to show you how I annotate. And if you like how I annotate, you can kind of model the way you do it off of that. So this is a passage called Turtles Use the Earth's Magnetic Field as Global GPS. And so it says, in 1996, a loggerhead turtle called Adelita, so I'm going to circle the name, swam across 9,000 miles from Mexico to Japan, crossing the entire Pacific on her way. Wallace J. Nichols tracked this epic journey with a satellite tag, but Adelita herself had no such technology at her disposal. How did she steer a route across 2 oceans to find her destination? And I'm going to circle this question mark because it indicates that there's a question. Nathan Putman has the answer. By testing hatchling turtles in a special tank, he has found that they can use the Earth's magnetic field as their own global positioning system, or GPS. By sensing the field, they can work out both their latitude and longitude and head in the right direction. So I'm going to write on the side here a summary of what I just read. So I read that, baby turtles use the Earth's magnetic field as a GPS. So I'm going to put that there, and then I'm going to keep reading. Putman works in the lab of Ken Lohman. So that's another name. So I'm going to circle that. Who has been studying the magnetic abilities of loggerheads for over 20 years. In his lab at the University of North California, Lohman places hatchlings in a large water tank surrounded by a large grid of electromagnetic coils. So we remember about magnetic field earlier, so I'm going to underline that. And then it says in 1991, he found that the baby started swimming in the opposite direction if he used the coils to reverse the direction of the magnetic field. They could use the field as a compass to get their bearings. So I think this is a pretty important piece of scientific evidence. So I'm going to write that babies swim in opposite direction when magnetic field is reversed. And then it says later, so I'm going to box the transition word later. Lohmann showed that they could also use the magnetic field to work out their position. For them, this is literally a matter of life or death. So I'm actually going to underline that they can use the magnetic field to work out their position. And then hatchlings born off the sea coast of Florida spend their early lives in the North Atlantic Gyre, a warm current that circles between North America and Africa. So gyre is a word that I've never heard before, so I'm going to circle it. And remember that it is a warm current. And then it says if they're swept back towards the cold waters outside the gyre, they die. So that's kind of important. If they go to cold waters, which is not the gyre, they will die. And so this is how the magnetic senses keep them safe. So then I would make like a little summary here about magnetic field helps with position and babies in cold water die, something like that. So that's how I would annotate this short excerpt of the passage. And you guys will have the opportunity to practice this in a little bit in your groups. So I will clear this for now. And then the next thing I want to show you guys is, if you remember the video, they talked about 3 types of questions: information, ideas, rhetoric, and synthesis. And I want to show you, so this week we're going over information and ideas. And I just want to really quickly show you what those kinds of questions look like. And you can also access this page later yourself and do some practice problems. So we have reading closely questions that ask you just kind of details about the passage, citing textual evidence, which asks you to give specific lines that give you evidence, and determining central ideas and themes, which is about main ideas, and summarizing. And there's more. Summarizing, which asks you basically to summarize what the passage is about, understanding relationships, and interpreting words and phrases in the context. So they'll ask you like literally, what does this word mean in context? So that is an overview of the reading lesson for this week. And tutors, I will put the link to this PowerPoint in the chat, and you can use it with your students. In the next slides, there's some practice passages that you can work on together. But also feel free to use any resources that you have planned beforehand.
So today we're going to talk about some of the structure of the SAT reading section, which is about like central ideas and evidence, and also some annotation strategies that you can use to tackle these passages. And the video here is not showing, at least on my screen.
That is okay, because I'm actually going to go grab another room of people. So we will be right back.
Guess we can hang out here for a moment while everyone else is able to join. Hope you guys are having a good Friday so far. Gonna stop sharing for a moment to make sure that I have the sound all set up and everything. All right, cool. Awesome. Have people joined back?
Yep, you should be good to go.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. If you weren't here before, today we're going to be talking about the SAT reading section, just sort of a general overview, and also some annotation strategies that you can use to really tackle these passages. We're going to start off hopefully watching this YouTube video just to give you a little bit more of an idea on what to expect with these passages.
The SAT consists of tests in reading, writing and language, and math, plus an optional essay. This video focuses on the reading test. This test is designed to measure how well you read and interpret the kinds of texts you'll encounter in college and your career. All of the questions are linked to literary or informational passages from engaging published works. These will include single passages, which may have one or more informational graphics, and paired passages.
Oh, do not know what just happened there. Can try and put it back where we were. So sorry about that.
And interpret the kinds of texts you'll encounter in college or informational passages from engaging published works. These will include single passages, which may have one or more informational graphics, and paired passages. You'll have 65 minutes to read the passages and answer 52 questions. There is one literary passage on the test, which is drawn from an American or international work of fiction, such as a short story or novel. The remaining passages will be informational, taken from nonfiction works in the areas of history, social studies, and science. Included in these nonfiction works will be a passage or pair of passages taken from the U.S. founding documents or the Great Global Conversation, works from around the world that focus on topics like freedom, justice, and human dignity. The purpose of each passage in the reading test might be to tell a story, make an argument, or explain a study or experiment. The passages will range in complexity from a 9th grade level up to what you would expect to see in the first year of college or other post-secondary training. The questions on the reading test fall into 3 main categories: information and ideas, questions that focus on what the passage says, directly or indirectly, rhetoric, questions that ask you to think about how the author conveys his or her meaning, and synthesis, questions that require you to draw conclusions and make connections between passages or between passages and informational graphics. For more information on the SAT reading test, check out satpractice.org, where you can get free hands-on practice.
All right, so now that we've learned a little bit more about what the reading section looks like and what it entails, here's just some more notes about its structure. So it's 65 minutes with 52 questions. And there's about 10 or 11 questions per each of the 5 passages. And for the 5 passages, there's 4 single passages and 1 paired. And also in terms of the themes of the passages, there's 1 literary passage, 2 passages that focus more on history or social studies, and then 2 passages that focus on science. So it really covers a whole bunch of different subjects. So now we're going to talk about annotating. So how do you tackle those 5 passages? So first, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you guys what annotating is, like what it means for you. If not, I will supply my own answer, but feel free to drop it in the chat or shout it out. This can be for everyone too, so if tutors want to answer, feel free. Nope, all right, that's totally fine. So basically annotating is just really marking up the text in a way that makes sense to you and that is beneficial to you, that really helps you focus on the material and to highlight the main ideas and words, and to also jot down your thoughts as you're reading so you can come back to them later and come back to them also when you're trying to answer the questions for the SAT. So for annotating, some strategies are to write a 3 to 5 word summary of the paragraph, just so you know what it talks about, and again, so you can reference it when you're answering questions. And some strategies that we're going to teach you today and that we're going to practice with are to underline the main ideas of the passage, and then to circle keywords and to box transition words. So in terms of keywords, what we're going to want to do is circle all the names and all the words that reveal tone. And then for transition words, it's just really the ideas like when you're switching between different ideas and sentences, those but, later, however, we're going to want to box those. So definitely, if there's any other annotations that you want to do and want to share with us, feel free to shout it out. All annotations are valid, but these are just some strategies we're going to be using today. All right, so now we're going to have some practice. Just before we move on, I'm just going to point this out again. Again, we're underlining main ideas, circling keywords, and boxing transition words. All right, so we have some practice here. Let's see if I can, oops, I flipped the page when I meant to go to annotating. I am sorry. See if the top bar will appear for me again. All right, there we go. So first I'm going to start off with reading the passage, and then you guys can like volunteer and we can see how we can annotate that together. So let's start with the passage. In 1996, a loggerhead turtle called Adelita swam across 9,000 miles from Mexico to Japan, crossing the entire Pacific on her way. Wallace J. Nichols tracked this epic journey with a satellite tag. But Adelita herself had no such technology at her disposal. How did she steer a route across 2 oceans to find her destination? So that was the first paragraph. Are there any key words like names or ideas that we will want to circle in this paragraph?
A loggerhead turtle called Adelita.
Yes, absolutely. Let's circle that name right now. Then we have another name here as well, Wallace J. Nichols. Those are 2 people we're going to want to keep in mind. I'm also going to go ahead and circle this question mark because that's really a main idea, like of a question that we're going to want to keep in our minds as we continue to read the passage. All right, let's go to the second paragraph. Nathan Putman has the answer. By testing hatchling turtles in a special tank, he has found that they can use the Earth's magnetic field as their own global positioning system, or GPS. By sensing the field, they can work out both their latitude and longitude and head in the right direction. So just to start off, we've got another name here. We can go ahead and circle that. Sorry, my annotations are a little shaky on the computer. We've also got some main ideas here to underline. Can anyone tell me what some of those are? All right, I can go ahead and start underlining those. So one of those that we'll want to really point out here is the Earth's magnetic field, and then also global positioning system, GPS, because those are 2 like main strategies they use to like track the turtles in the tank. So that's something we'll want to keep in mind. And then I can also, since this is a paragraph with some really good information in it, just write up a quick summary. So baby turtles use the magnetic field as a GPS. Awesome. I will try and move that. Apologies, it's not moving. There it is. Awesome. All right, so that was our second paragraph. I'll try and speed things up here a little bit. So now we can go to the third paragraph. So Putman works in the lab of Ken Lofman, who has been studying the magnetic abilities of loggerheads for over 20 years. In his lab at the University of North Carolina, Lofman places hatchlings in a large water tank surrounded by a large grid of electromagnetic coils. In 1991, he found that the babies started swimming in the opposite direction if he used the coils to reverse the direction of the magnetic field around them. They could use the field as a compass to get their bearing. Does anyone want to shout out some ideas of what we might want to circle or underline for this paragraph?
Another option could be if you all want to annotate the screen, you could highlight or select things.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. That is great. Another key name we need to be aware of. Oh, didn't Audrey want to put something? Yes, another mention of that man from before. Great. Yes, magnetic abilities. Those are very important to highlight. Yes, and we want to make sure we know that when the baby started swimming in the opposite direction if they used the coils to reverse the direction of the magnetic field. Those are some very important points that we would want to highlight. All right, I can read out the last paragraph and then we can do some more annotations. Later, Lofman showed that they can also use the magnetic field to work out their position. For them, this is literally a matter of life or death. Hatchlings born off the seacoast of Florida spend their early lives in the North Atlantic Gyre, a warm current that circles between North America and Africa. If they're swept towards the cold waters outside the gyre, they die. Their magnetic sense keeps them safe. All right, if you guys want to drop some annotations in there, that's fantastic. Otherwise, I'll start just highlighting a few more things that I think we should pick out of this passage. So one thing you might not be familiar with is this word here, the warm currents. So just if there's a word you're not super familiar with, go ahead and underline like a definition that pertains to it, or circle the word itself just so you're aware and that you're able to like pick out that information if you need it. Another thing I'm going to do here is box the word later, because it's one of those transition words that we might want to be aware of when you're moving between ideas. And just another couple annotations that they're using the magnetic field to work out their position, and that it's a matter of life or death. And if they're outside the guard, they die. So just highlight that important part there. I think we've done a pretty good job of annotating this passage here. So if we were to look at a bunch of questions, we would have some really good points to draw off of to be able to with our annotations, to be able to answer those questions pretty efficiently. So let me stop annotating. Oh, the annotations are still there. But just to summarize, there's 3 categories of questions as well. Information ideas, your what, rhetoric, which is your how, and your synthesis, which is your connections. And your annotations will help with all 3 of these things, but especially with connections when you're trying to move between ideas. There'll also be some passages that you'll have for practice, and with some questions corresponding with them as well that you can look at with your tutors after this. More practice. And here's some suggestions for homework and some links of things to watch and study so that you can practice highlighting, annotating, and identifying the main ideas and details with your annotations.